Hello, and welcome to Biomass Magazine's podcast. I am your host, Anna Simet, editor of Biomass Magazine. And today I am joined by Patrick Serfass, executive director at the American Biogas Council. Patrick, hello, and thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Anna. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So we're here today to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act. Passed on August 16th. It covers everything from healthcare to carbon emissions and domestic energy production. Lots of good stuff in there for biofuels and bioenergy. In our last three podcasts, we've chatted with industry leaders about the impacts on modern wood heating, biomass power, biodiesel, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel. Before we get into what is in there for biogas and RNG, Patrick, for our listeners who aren't familiar with the American Biogas Council, could you talk a little bit about your organization and its members?
Sure. Well, the American Biogas Council is the voice of the biogas industry in the US. And we represent about 300 plus companies that are all dedicated to recycling the maximum amount of organic waste that can be turned into biogas and soil products. And I would say that right now we have about 2,300 operational biogas systems in the US. And that probably represents about 15% of the market. And we've got the potential to build 15,000 new systems. And while we want to build more biogas systems, really the most important thing for our society is that we recycle the most organic material. We have a lot of organic material, millions of tons that we produce, and we need to make sure that that's recycled. So why not recycle it into renewable energy and soil products? That's what we're all about.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks. So let's just dig right into the Inflation Reduction Act. As I said, there's a lot of stuff in it. Could you maybe talk our listeners through the components in it that will impact biogas and RNG?
Well, the Inflation Reduction Act has really been a big deal to the biogas industry, and it does cover lots of different things. We've been working on some parts of the Inflation Reduction Act for a decade now. And so it's a big deal to finally have Congress taking some actions on things that our industry's needed for so long. Before the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, only really one sector of the biogas industry was able to benefit in our tax code. And those are projects that were using their biogas to make renewable electricity. And that's great. And those projects are fantastic. But wind and solar had a tax credit extension for the last 7 years that even that one sector of the biogas industry didn't have. And the fossil fuel industry has had tax credits baked into our tax code and advantages baked into our tax code for many, many years. So it created a really unlevel playing field for natural market forces to be able to work. And now that playing field has been leveled a lot more. And so we're really excited about being able to compete more fairly with other renewables like wind and solar, and then also with fossil fuels. And so what the IRA allows us to do is it gives banks who are trying to finance new biogas projects the certainty that the tax credit for biogas electricity projects is going to be there. That's certainty that we have not had really ever in the industry. And that's going to help finance new projects. And then it's also added a new tax credit for the non-electricity biogas systems. So these are biogas systems that are recycling organic material and turning them into renewable heat so that you don't have to use conventional natural gas to make heat, or systems that are turning the biogas into renewable natural gas to put into the pipeline to fuel vehicles, or any of the ways that conventional gas is used, putting renewable gas into our pipeline. So these are systems that are really important and have not had a tax code until now, or not have a tax credit until now. And so it really helps all different kinds of biogas systems to be able to be developed, and it creates better market forces, more fair market forces for biogas systems to be able to compete with other renewables and fossil fuels. And then on top of that, there was just some additional funding added to some programs that are managed by the US Department of Agriculture, which help to encourage the deployment of renewable energy systems on farms like biogas, but also wind and solar.
Mm-hmm.
And then also money that went to a USA program called EQIP, which is all about using conservation practices on farms. So that's things like better managing the runoff from roofs on your farm structures, or making roads that don't encourage erosion and then run off into the waterways, or vegetation near streams again to decrease runoff. So there's like hundreds of these conservation practices, about 20 to 30 of them are related to biogas systems. And that program got some more money too to increase conservation on farms. So a lot of good things coming out of it. And we think it'll help to build more biogas systems.
Right, no doubt. And this industry has just been growing like crazy. So I can only imagine, now moving forward.
Well, it's interesting. Some parts of the biogas industry have been growing like crazy. You're absolutely right about that. The projects that turn their biogas into renewable natural gas grew last year by over 40%, which is amazing for any industry to see double-digit growth and like a 40% growth. But that was just one sector. And out of the 2,300 biogas systems we have in the country, only 300 of them right now are RNG projects. And so even though some sectors are growing, one of the things that the Inflation Reduction Act will allow us to do is build out projects on smaller farms and at smaller wastewater facilities and at food processors that create a lot of food waste that needs to be recycled, but the smaller ones, not just the large and the extra large facilities. And that's super important as a society, because we can't only build out the large facilities. We need to be able to make sure that we can economically build the small and medium-sized ones. And this bill really helps to do that.
Right, absolutely. So, okay, Patrick, we've covered what's in the IRA. What other policy pieces or, legislative action what are the priorities ABC is working on or watching right now?
Well, there's a couple things. We're looking for some guidance from Treasury to help with gas interconnection. They've put out guidance for electric interconnection projects, but not gas interconnected projects. So that's a small thing from U.S. Treasury that we're looking for. We've got the next Farm Bill coming up that Congress will consider, which covers a lot of different things, and one of those things is biogas systems. And then the Renewable Fuel Standard, which is a policy that helps to encourage the production of renewable fuels in the US for transportation, so that we can decarbonize our transportation sector. We're looking to EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, administers that program, the Renewable Fuel Standard, the RFS. And we're looking for some guidance to come out from them this November that will help set the fuel volumes for the next couple of years, which is really important for for how that program works. But then also we're looking for guidance that will allow biogas systems to generate the credits that the RFS creates for biogas systems that can charge electric vehicles, or biogas systems that can make hydrogen to fuel cell electric vehicles. This pathway already exists, and it's existed for over 7 years, but EPA has not yet processed a registration for a single project. And they have said that with the guidance that they're going to put out in November, that will start the process of them approving projects that will use biomass, in our case, organic waste with biogas systems, to charge battery electric vehicles or to make hydrogen for fuel cell electric vehicles. And that's obviously, with the way our society is changing, our transportation sector needs to change. We need to have that part of the program working. And so we're really looking forward to that guidance coming out in November.
We will have to circle back with you then, November, December, and maybe talk about the developments with that. And so I guess, Patrick, with that, I think we've covered what we wanted to today. And on behalf of Biomass Magazine, I just want to thank you so much for joining us on the podcast and sharing your insight with us.
Thanks so much. If anyone wants to find out more, you can find us at AmericanBiogasCouncil.org. Thanks so much, Anna.
Awesome. Thanks again, Patrick. And for our listeners, as always, thanks for tuning in and have a great day.